Once upon a time, in the kingdom of Shravasti, a poor Brahmin arrived in search of a livelihood. Fortunately, he found favor with the wealthy merchants in the city, and with their help, he managed to accumulate a good deal of money. He converted all of his wealth into 1,000 gold pieces and secretly buried it in the woods. Every day, he would go to the spot to ensure that no one had touched his treasure. One day, the Brahmin went to the woods as usual, but to his horror, he found that his hoard of gold had been stolen. Overcome with sorrow, he ran back to the city, crying loudly and beating his chest, telling everyone that his gold had been taken. Seeing no one to share his grief, the Brahmin decided to end his life by drowning himself in the river. King Prasenajit, who was returning from a bath in the river, met the Brahmin and learned of the tragedy that had befallen him. "Why do you want to kill yourself, O Brahmin?" the king asked. "I am here to inquire into any theft that was committed in this kingdom. I shall restore your lost treasure or compensate you from my treasury. Now, tell me whether there was any mark to indicate the spot where you buried the gold." "Yes, sire, there was a wild cucumber plant over my treasure. Now that too is gone," replied the Brahmin. "There may be many such plants in the woods. How can that be a proper mark?" the king asked. "No, sire, this was the only wild cucumber plant in the entire vicinity," the Brahmin replied. The king went to his palace and thought over the problem until he found a way to catch the thief. He summoned his minister and said, "I do not feel quite well. I would like to see some doctors. Can you please arrange to bring every doctor in the city to me?" It was done quickly. All the doctors assembled outside the king's private chamber. As each doctor was ushered in, the king asked him, "Who are your present patients? What medicines have you given them?" The doctors answered these questions and the king sent them away. At last, one doctor said, "Sire, yesterday I gave the juice of a wild cucumber plant to the rich merchant, Matradat." The king immediately became interested and said, "I see. Where did you get this plant?" "Sire, it is not a common plant in these parts. My servant found it in the woods after a great deal of searching," replied the doctor. "We would like your servant to present himself before us at once," the king told the doctor. Soon, the doctor's servant was standing before the king. "What did you do with the gold which you found when you dug up the wild cucumber plant?" the king asked him. The doctor's servant turned pale at this question. Shivering with fear, he replied, "I kept it safe in my house, your majesty." "That is fine," the king said. "That gold belongs to such and such a Brahmin. Restore it to him at once." The servant took leave, feeling as though he had been saved from the gallows. The minister had watched the entire proceedings without understanding a thing. He was very impressed with the ease with which the king had laid his hands on the real culprit. He wanted to know how the king had done it. The king smiled at the minister's question and said, "My job was to find out which one out of the entire population of the city could have dug up that gold." According to the Brahmin, nobody knew that there was gold under the plant, so whoever thought of digging at that spot must have done so for the plant, but not for the gold. There was no such plant anywhere else in the neighborhood. So, if anyone did need the plant, he had to dig only where the gold was hidden. Had anyone dug only for the gold, he would have thrown the plant away. Unless the man came for the plant, both the plant and the gold would have remained undiscovered. And that is how I was able to catch the thief.